Hey, everybody.
Hi there. How's it going?
Everybody.
We're good. It's lunch in Seattle again, and we got another virtual main stage. I'm Trevor with the Seattle Design Festival.
Cal, nice to see you all again.
I'm George.
We have, yes, George. And of course, we have Tyler.
And Tyler, thank you.
We got a big show today, and we started late. So
just a few minutes.
We're gonna jump into it pretty quickly here. Let's give a preview of who we got coming up today. I'll throw it on the screen if somebody wants to share.
Sure, I can walk us through that. So first up, we'll have Remote Proximity, which is going to be a pre-recorded talk by Rosalie Yu, Tara Kelton, and Jayme Yen. They're all strangers who met during the beginning of the pandemic, so I'm really excited to see how they interact with one another. But they're artists and designers who will be discussing how physical space is experienced through screens. And they'll be on afterwards for a live Q&A. So make sure you write down your questions in the chat. And then after them, we'll have Amy Brooks Thornton, who will be filming screening a film. Wow, sorry about that. Screening a film called Sensing the Wood-Fired Oven. And I'm really excited and looking forward to that. And I think Trevor, you'll be interviewing her afterwards.
Before.
There you go. And then following that is Mindy Lehrman, who will be giving a talk on her case for downtown Seattle Cultural Center. Looking forward to that as well. And then finally, we'll have Future Arts, whose
they're actually
presentation.
going second. That's my
fault. They're going second. Sorry about that.
But Amy will be in Future Arts Law.
All right. They're titled Designing for IRL and /URL.
And then we'll have another video from our design and community committee for Seattle Design Festival. This one on the Seattle Walk report. And hopefully we'll wrap it all up with some fun stuff at the end. So fingers crossed. Did anybody do any fun design things yet? George, you're at the end of the day. Did you do any design things over there?
I'm into like kinetic wind sculptures. We have a lot of wind here now, so I'm experimenting. Amazing.
Nice.
Building from simple materials, not to make it too complex. I will show it someday.
You should show everybody what you built for your keyboard to avoid making noise during the show.
Oh yeah. This little piece, just slapped it together 2 minutes before the show, so it will keep the paper away from the keyboard and the mic. So because I noticed that it sounded when I was writing, it was making noise. So, but now it's far away, and actually it's a better angle too. So I can read, write, and make notes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Always designing, huh?
Yeah. Yep.
Always thinking about solutions.
I did want to highlight before we get rolling that there is also a community Seattle Design Festival community spotlight tonight in Columbia City from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. The best way to find out about that, of course, is to go to cdesignfest.org right there. Or if you head down to the Columbia City Farmers Market, we will have a design festival booth at the market with all of the information, maps, etc., to take you around the neighborhood to all of the great things going on there. And then there will be a community spotlight tomorrow downtown from 11 a.m. till 8:30 p.m. The best spot to go for that is head to the Center for Architecture and Design at 1010 Western, and that'll act as a hub for the overall event. Or Fulcrum Coffee, we've also been told that that'll be a central location as well. So check those out. And of course, there's more info on our website. All right, let's get ready for Jayme Yen. Cal, do you want to tell us all about this?
Sure. Yeah, I kind of just introduced them a little bit earlier, but we'll be seeing a presentation called Remote Proximity from Rosalie Yu, who's based in Taipei, New York, Tara Kelton, who's based in India, and Jayme Yen, who's based here in Seattle, Washington. They are strangers who met during the beginning of the pandemic, and they'll be talking about how physical space is experienced through screens. Cool. And again, they'll be on for a live Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat.
Yeah, please do add your questions or either in the chat or the comments on Facebook, and the comments I think on Twitch will come through for us. All right, let's take a look.
Hello, thank you for coming to our talk today. Many thanks to the Seattle Design Festival for hosting this talk and for Cal for all her support. Hello, thank you for coming to our talk today. Many thanks to the Seattle Design Festival for hosting this talk and for Cal for all her support. My name is Jayme Yen. I'm a designer and design teacher based here in Seattle, and I'm interested in ideas around deep mapping.
Hi, my name is Rosalie Yu. I am an artist and researcher based in Taipei and New York City. I work with groups and manipulate tools to explore things that don't fit neatly into conventional standards.
Hi, I'm Tara Kelton. I'm an artist and designer in Bangalore, the Silicon Valley of Asia. I work across media and look at the social effects of digital platforms. More recently, I've been looking at the impact of Western corporations on my city's infrastructure and communities.
We're going to talk today about this idea of remote proximity and what it means to us as three strangers on the internet who have tried since 2020 to get closer to each other. We met through an online class at the School for Poetic Computation, where we realized we shared similar interests about how physical space can be translated and experienced through screens.
2020 was a year fraught with uncertainty for pretty much everyone. Each of us was alone and isolated in 3 different countries. I was in India, Rosalie in Taiwan, and Jayme in the US. And we were handling the pandemic in wildly different ways. No one knew when they might see each other in person again, and pretty much everything had moved online.
So as designers and artists, we decided to explore all the tools that were promoted as ways to connect online. And this evolved into a series of experiments about closeness, what it could mean, whether it be physical, emotional, intellectual, experimental, or spiritual. So when we are only able to be with other people virtually, what could closeness mean?
So we're going to start off talking about inhabiting the same online spaces together. So even when it's virtual, these online spaces can be considered as places. And so since 2021, we have been meeting at this one particular Zoom URL, Zoom being one of the most ubiquitous video conferencing software platforms since the beginning of the pandemic. That's why we've been using it. So one thing that's been great is that these meetings have felt like a lifeline during a time of extreme uncertainty. They've been very, very grounding for us. But visually, Zoom is incredibly static. We're locked into these little boxes on screen. You're always facing the camera. And lots of people have discussed how they feel Zoom fatigue and a lot of discomfort upon seeing themselves on screen or being forced to always look at their own camera feed. So, we begin wondering how this kind of setup affects our behavior in these meetings. And if this structure and if this particular visual interface has this kind of effect, how do the structure and visual interfaces of other platforms affect us?
So to answer those questions, we took our first field trip to other platforms. In this case is Mozilla Hubs. Hubs is a collaborative platform for 3D virtual spaces. It runs on web browser, or you can view it in the VR headset. Hubs is accessible, so during the pandemic, a lot of artists were able to build their own world and invite people to join. So what you're seeing here is Sophie Clan's show. She used Hubs as a way to show her monumental 3D printed sculptures. And in other examples in Lin Zihuan's project, the artists invite others to collaborate in building a virtual utopia. And what was unique about this platform is it was the first time we can see each other's body as avatar floating in space, not just as a head and torso on the screen in Zoom. And we are able to look at the same direction, look at the sculpture together. And that also allows for quiet moments of contemplation when we are looking at sculpture together, and then we're just there in silence. And I think that might be awkward on Zoom. Another thing is the audio is spatialized, so you have to walk physically close to someone in order to hear what they say. And that experience is very different from Zoom.
We also left behind the grid of Zoom to explore other forms of specifically video conferencing software that had sprung up since the start of the pandemic. So Oyay and GatherTown are two such platforms that seemed to emerge very, very shortly after isolation began. And they are offered a kind of a whimsical variety of ways that people could meet online. In Oyay, for instance, everyone's camera feeds are placed into different parts of a photographic setting. There are lots of different photos that you can use for your meetings, from a lounge to, being inside a bunch of champagne glasses, which is kind of fun. And in GatherTown, you are a character in an 8-bit environment. And the room can be customized in a lot of different ways for different meeting needs. GatherTown also uses spatialized audio, so you can only hear each other if you're within proximity of each other. So that's very similar to Mozilla Hubs. We were curious about how different interfaces would affect different online behavior. And in general, these were both really fun, a little bit distracting, I would say, in terms of the amount of detail in these environments, where it's basically very decorative, the setting. But in some ways, the decoration, the sort of whimsical nature also feels like an environment. It's a digital environment, a digital environment as an icebreaker. It's a bit absurd. You can talk about it with your other fellow meeting members. And it could probably help make people feel more comfortable more quickly inside of an online meeting.
Here in Minecraft, we transitioned from platforms that had very limited customization to being able to build an entire environment for ourselves. And Minecraft is a sandbox video game that was launched in 2011. It's a procedurally generated 3D world with virtually infinite terrain. And players can do all sorts of things in Minecraft, including gathering raw materials, crafting objects, building structures, and killing zombies. Jayme is actually a master zombie killer. This was the first environment that had its own time, where we could sort of experience time shifting inside a virtual environment together. And every day in Minecraft is only 20 minutes long. So we were able to together watch the sun rise and set and rise again. And it was one of the more poetic experiences that we've had together. At the same time, in parallel, we also explored Second Life, which is a platform that's been around for a long time, since 2003. And Second Life allows people to build quite complex environments and avatars for themselves, and to basically lead a second life in a virtual world. And in many ways, it's probably the closest to VR chat in its logic. In Second Life, I noticed we became these sort of tourists and also voyeurs, where we were encountering real people, and we were wandering through these user-constructed landscapes, going on adventures together. We rode a roller coaster, we took selfies, and at first we were kind of taking pictures like tourists on a holiday, and then we started taking pictures while thinking about game photography and what it means to practice photography inside digitally constructed environments. Until now, our meeting spaces of Zoom, Hubs, Minecraft didn't exist until we logged in, but Second Life just exists. Each world persists even when we log out, in a kind of closer approximation of the real world.
We were curious to see how it would feel like if we were actually in the room together or in the room that we're familiar with. We decided to recreate a 3D recreation of Jamie's apartment and to visit it together in Hubs. What happened was we hung out in her apartment, we dropped in 3D scans of food, and so it looks like we were actually sharing a meal together, and we even took selfies together. There was something weird about showing parts of the room that's usually hidden on the Zoom screen. We usually only see Jayme from this corner of her apartment, and now it kind of opens up. It's almost like we now can see a TV host, what he's actually wearing. He's not wearing any pants. And I was curious to know how Jayme will react to this invasion of her personal space, but for her, the roughness of the 3D scans actually make her space more anonymous. It feels less uncomfortable for her. So after exploring being in the same online space, we thought about adding time to our explorations, time in the sense of a feeling of greater immediacy and simultaneity. Right now, it's actually 10:19 a.m. in New York, so that's like 10:19 p.m. in Taiwan.
7:49 p.m. in India.
And 7:19 in Seattle AM.
We started with a Google Map tour of my neighborhood and my high school in Taiwan. Google Maps allow you to go back in time, so it's kind of like a time capsule. And exploring the spaces, we even found something like an Easter egg. We saw this student from my high school took a 360 video of himself, and you see this weird distortion of this person's face just stored in this location on Google Map. We also did a ride along with Tara as she took an Uber from her home to her studio. Tara was excited to show what this global platform feels like in her local context. And for me, it was strange and intimate to be with her and accompany her during her daily routine. And it was raining, and it was all three of us inside the same Uber ride, looking out the blurry window onto her streets. And when something occurred, it was like it's happening to all three of us. For me and Jayme, it's kind of like watching a TV show.
Yeah.
It
It is. Yeah, and I really like that this was, kind of like an everyday thing that we got to share with you. Like this is like a common thing that you have where, the Google Maps tours, like Rosalie's high school and neighborhood, my neighborhood back in California, like those are things that are part of our personal history, but it's not necessarily like we don't do those things every day anymore. So they're kind of like time traveling to the past. But this is a common kind of everyday thing that you're doing. So we became for a moment part of your daily routine, which was really nice.
Yeah, there is something very beautiful about this video too. Like the rain and also the glitchiness because of the internet and Zoom, the speed of the internet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really lovely.
Yeah, I like that idea when you say, "I will take you on an Uber ride." I was like, "Ooh." That's very fun.
So here we started to get into constructing our own experiments to get closer to each other rather than visiting existing platforms. And we wondered if we could experience the same meal or share a meal by putting together a picnic of items that are available all over the world and then consume them using identical plates and glasses and cutlery that we purchase on Amazon using the magic of industrial globalization. And these are some of our initial attempts where we looked at ramen and chips from each city. And in our next steps, we want to try and lie down in the same bed in IKEA at the same time. Although I think one of us will have to hide there overnight to make the time zones work. So what we've discovered is the most difficult to achieve remotely is physical touch. And we've been thinking about various ways to achieve it, from using haptic technologies to this much simpler experiment where we each 3D scanned an object from our space that's significant or important to us. This is my object. It's my most prized possession. It's a piece of the Berlin Wall that I purchased at the Berlin airport. And after this, we're going to 3D print these objects, 3D print each other's objects to sort of teleport them to each other's spaces and have something to physically hold in our hands that we can touch of each other's. We've also been thinking about all this information that you typically have access to when you're with someone in person, that's missing online and in Zoom, that we've called ambient information. And here we've started documenting and sharing images of all of these objects from our daily lives that are never visible. Here's my dog Momo wearing my hat.
So still thinking along the lines of environmental or ambient information, and how much do we need to share with each other in order to feel close to one another, we became curious about other kinds of mundane details that could be collected and shared. So Tara had the idea, what if we share data that is intimate and normally goes to corporations? So these are things like Netflix preferences, period tracking data, social media posts, et cetera, et cetera. So instead of corporations trying to surveil individuals, it would essentially be the three of us trying to surveil each other in an effort to be close. So as a conceptual prototype, we spent a week creating these 30 by 30 pixel screen recordings of our desktops. Whatever you see in the 30 by 30 square, it just happens to be what was on our desktop at that time, passing through that area. So emails we're composing, social media that we're scrolling through, or videos that we're watching. We were curious about whether or not we'd be able to see and identify the things that we were doing, and we sort of can. But we also wanted to keep a very small portion of the screen kind of visible to each other. Partly because aesthetically it's more interesting to look at it in the sort of abstract way, and the abstractness again helps keep it slightly more anonymous. Would we be willing to give each other greater access to the activity on our desktops, recording the whole screen? I think that's a question that we're still kind of thinking about. How would this be different from having Rosalie and Tara just stand behind me watching me computer all day long? Another question. On the flip side of this surveillance and having this kind of access, would it also just feel like having a presence, like having another friend be with you all day long if you can see a little window to their desktop on your desktop? So in terms of presence, what if there was a way to tell if someone was on the other side of a computer screen, on the other side of a browser window, or say, but instead of like really knowing that they're there, you just had to kind of trust that they were present with you. So this is a project called Anonymous Animal by the artist, writer, and game developer Everest Pipkin. It occurs on the hour, every hour. You just have to be at this particular URL when it starts in order to see it. It's a 15-minute durational browser poem where you're guided through a series of Wikipedia pages, live webcams, and other links. And there's always a single line of text on top of the window, the iframe that you're looking at. And occasionally the text instructs you to do things like move your cursor so it sits on top of a part of an image. And you're just touching, you're not clicking, you're not doing any other type of interaction, really. So one thing that's really beautiful about this project is the initial instructions where Everest asks that you invite a loved one to meet you here at the next time that the project occurs. We've tried this once together, and we were curious about, can you actually feel the presence of someone else on the other side of the screen, so to speak? Overall, this project is a meditation, comes from the early parts of the pandemic when we all went online. We were all indoors behind screens. We're alone, but somehow we're together doing very similar things. And again, we're still thinking about this question of how much information do we need to share and know each other about each other in order to feel close, to feel connected, to feel that we are present at the same time.
Recreational meetings is organized by Stephen Block. As an artist, he's very interested in exploring what if meeting is an art form, and he has been working on this format for a long time, using Skype even before Zoom is a thing. And one of the guiding questions for him were, as remote culture develops and fatigue sets in, how can the codification of online behavior and sociality be resisted? And this edition of recreational meeting that we all attended is an anonymous poetry workshop, and we all change our names to a character that we choose, such as Cat or Rock, and turn off our camera while we enter. Then each character were assigned a prompt for writing, and at the end of the workshop, we all read what we wrote together. I thought it was interesting for us because Zoom is essentially a video chat platform, and the simple gesture of rewriting the rules of this platform, audio only, and change our screen name, change our behavior instantly. And the fact that we are anonymous and entering the meeting with a disguise give us more freedom to be creative. And so for us, this is also an example of using a platform not as its intended use or ignoring certain key functions.
We also wanted to explore what would happen if we brought in a human visitor to mix things up and how it would change the dynamic between us. And so I invited a friend of mine, Kosai Katawala, who's a design researcher, whose areas of interest happen to intersect quite perfectly with all three of us. And he's designed experiments with newer media and human interaction. He's worked as a design researcher at Intel, working with health and wellness, and he has a pretty wide range of obscure eclectic interests. And these are all the different things we talked about. We talked about how on Zoom you can't make eye contact with anyone because if you look at the camera, you can't look at their faces. And we discussed how to solve the problem, and then we took a picture of all of us looking at the camera together. We talked about how the number 4 is bad luck, how it was the 4th day of the lunar cycle, how there were 4 of us. I think through this process, the 3 of us also began to notice new things about each other. By this point, we'd all become pretty comfortable with each other on Zoom, and it was interesting to observe how having a new person there quite significantly changed our behavior.
So 36 questions that lead to love was one of the experiments that we did that became a real turning point for us. And it helped really fast track how much more comfortable we became with each other in a fairly short amount of time. So the 36 questions are something that was popularized by the New York Times Modern Love column in a 2015 essay, but it has its origins in psychology research from the late 90s. And the questions themselves were developed to help strangers form close relationships within a laboratory setting, so these researchers could go on and conduct their studies in closeness and relationship formation. The 36 questions are divided into 3 sets, and the questions actually escalate in terms of the kinds of disclosure people would be making towards each other or to each other. So it's intended, this type of escalation or intensity of question, to foster greater mutual vulnerability. This was, again, another original suggestion from Tara, who has a really great way of finding these things online. And we latched onto this idea of, what would happen if we fell in love with each other using these 36 questions. And I think we were all, or at least I was, kind of skeptical about whether these questions would be effective. But after multiple sessions, we typically answered like 2 or 3 questions per session, and we did this across many months. I became really surprised with how much we were really willing to share with each other, within this very simple construct of answering questions, and doing so kind of facing each other, cameras on, during Zoom. So it's not surprising in some ways that the origins of these questions helped us feel that much closer, that much faster. And this is when we were complimenting each other. That was one of the questions that we had to answer.
So in this simple experiment, we basically just all change our Zoom background to Jayme's room. Jayme always Zoom from the same corner of her room, and it says a lot about her personality. She's very steady, she's very consistent. Where me and Tara have been traveling and changing location quite frequently for the last 2 years. And there's this neon poster that we see in our meetings for the past 2 years. And there's something about her background that's familiar to all of us, that's very grounding, especially during the pandemic, that everything feels very uncertain. For us, it's like a show of unity and a mental exercise of how it's going to be like when we actually meet up in person.
While we were taking photographs in Second Life, we had this kind of Truman Show moment where we came to the edge of the world and we're hitting up against it, which kind of nicely embodies what we've been doing every week the past 2 years, trying to get closer and continuously coming up against these edges in these kind of enjoyable failures.
We feel what actually helped us get close and form friendships is actually the consistency of meeting each week for the last 2 years. And we wonder how we are going to do this meeting for the rest of our lives. Are we gonna keep on meeting? When are we gonna stop? Are we gonna stop? And it's also interesting that because tools keep on changing and morphing, it'll be great to see and keep on exploring how that's gonna affect our relationships down the road.
We hope all these experiments help us develop a toolkit to share with others who want to commune online and disrupt behavior within the virtual meeting platforms. So even though virtual meetings have become this ubiquitous part of everyday life, we hope there are others like us who are searching for more poetry in the ways we connect with each other online. So that's it from us. Thank you again for the Seattle Design Festival for having us and for letting us explore this topic that we've been thinking about, these experiments that we've been doing for the past couple years. And maybe we will all see you online one day too. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
I-
That was
Hi.
awesome. Thank you both so much for joining to chat with us a little bit about that presentation.
Sure. Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for so much for having us.
Of course. I do have a question right off the bat, if that's okay, if we kind of start that off, or if you'd like to give any comments before I ask in a few questions.
No, that sounds great.
Sure. So did the three of you ever write any poems that correlated to your virtual experiences, or differing poems on how you felt in the different platforms, like Mozilla Hub versus in Second Life versus in Zoom?
Oh, like actual poetry?
Yes, yeah, I was kind of intrigued in that class that you had met in, and didn't know if it was like that you met on that online class. And I was wondering if that ever sparked any other types of art or mediums that you're interested in.
Yeah, so yeah, the name is maybe slightly misleading. So the School for
I
Poetic
see.
Computation is and Rosalie chime in too. It's a school, an alternative school that was founded maybe 5, 7 years ago in New York. And it's specifically about, how can we take topics. I think initially it was a lot of having to do with coding and programming and like
I see.
computational design kind of stuff. And how do we kind of do more creative things, artistic things, and like treat code as poetry
I see.
versus like
Okay.
this, kind of yeah, kind of cold, static thing that we need to engage with.
I see. Got
So
it.
yeah,
Thank
and
you.
Rosalie, what was maybe you can talk a little bit about what we did in the class.
Yeah, the class is called Teaching Us Art. So we basically come in and we develop our own workshops, and that's how we get to know each other's work.
Got it.
And yeah, and so it's basically thinking about teaching us an art form. And but to answer your question, I think um, with the different places that we visited and experienced, we wanted to turn our experience into publication.
Mhm.
And so that's like the final output that we're thinking we want to produce.
Got it. And with this toolkit that you're thinking of, putting together, are you hoping to distribute this to, like classrooms, or to just individuals who are working fully remote? Will the toolbox or the toolkit change depending on the folks that it's being used by?
Yeah, I can see it being it changing or adapting, and especially I think this is something that Rosalie mentions in the video that the tools are going to be changing
Hmm.
constantly as both our expectations, both the technology gets better and faster, um, as maybe it tries to reach more people in different kinds of conditions. As yeah, we have like kind of increasing expectations of what the technology can do. So I think there's always going to be a little bit of, if we continue to think about this, there's going to be adaptation of the kit moving forward. But I think it's going to be kind of something there for people who want to engage with it. Not everybody needs their virtual meetings to be kind of, along these more playful lines that we've been thinking of. So I've been thinking, and Rosalie, I don't know if you have other thoughts about this, but like offering it as something that, oh, if you're interested in doing something that's a little bit off the shelf, or something to collapse the distance between yourself and the other people in a virtual meeting in a different way, here's some things that you can try.
I think we've all kind of heard of the term Zoom fatigue, right? And I'm curious, is there maybe one platform or another that particularly kind of broke that Zoom fatigue, or if there's, maybe one method that was better for some things and a different method that was maybe better for socializing versus meeting? What kind of discoveries did you come up with?
I can take this one real quick. I really enjoy using this platform called York. Um, and there is one setting um, when you first enter the room, everyone project their face. Our face were projected on like a wine glass, and so just by that, just entering that way, everyone kind of. I think everyone's just laughing when we go in, and it's like a little icebreaker, just the way that our face were displayed. And yeah, what do you think, Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, I the sort of the ones that are more spatial really, break you out of this kind of screen to screen format that is, kind of more typical with Zoom. And what's also neat, I think, and what we experienced is like in Mozilla Hubs or something like Minecraft, even though Minecraft is not, specifically made for meetings, but you can go off and explore somewhere and kind of like look at a detail. And this was especially true of like Second Life, for instance. Like you could go check out another part of the space and then come back together and say like, hey, why don't we go over here? I want to show you something. And so you're really having much more of a shared experience together in this kind of shared environment. So those were kind of fun as these like kind of much bigger spaces that there are other things that you could do rather than just, stare at each other. Other things to talk about.
Oh, did you all answer this earlier? I might have missed.
No, I don't think we answered it yet. So the question is, I did not catch the answer regarding the touch piece. Did you or did you not feel together? So I think, Mindy, I'm guessing that you're referring to the 3D printed objects, which we have not finished yet. I think mostly because I'm kind of a little bit slow on picking up the 3D scanning technology. So all of the objects that I have scanned are missing like huge chunks. So I need to practice that a little bit more. But then, yeah, we're going to be finding 3D printers local to us and then sending the files to these printers. And so that's a work in progress one or experiment in progress. But I think it's like the next major thing that we're going to be doing. I'm really excited for it, actually.
Fantastic. How long did it take for the three of you to kind of feel comfortable with each other in this space? And did one of the experiences, like, the Uber or eating together, did one of those experiences over the other kind of break the ice for you all? Did you all feel differently about the experiences, or was it kind of a whole, all of you felt similarly about one?
Yeah, I think for me is really answering the 36 questions to fall in love, and um, the fact that we met weekly for 2 years, and the fact that we never meet each other in person. I think those questions really set a tone. You know, um, just willing to give each other time weekly, and willing to be vulnerable. And sometimes we would talk for like 2 hours a week. And I think for me, that's really um, what makes this relationship work and continue to work on the project, even though we have never um, met in person in real life.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any plans to meet in real life? And if so, do you think it would kind of alter the experiences you've shared together or the experiences moving forward in a virtual space?
Yeah, we keep planning to meet in person, but I think with, various like schedule, changes and pandemic related reasons,
Right.
we have yet to meet in person. But it is like hopefully we get to do it. But that's a good question. I don't think we've thought fully through how that's going to change our these sort of online experiences and interactions that we've had. Uh, yeah, because again, this is all this like exploration in closeness and like how can we experience closeness with another, with others, even when we're never together or not ever going to be in the same space. So yeah, I would imagine that it would have this kind of immediate impact and kind of begin to shift things slightly, even after we meet like once.
Makes sense.
Cool. I think that's a good way to end it there. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you both so much. This is great
yes.
to be able to answer some questions that we had, and thank you for the presentation. It was wonderful.
And try yet another communication space.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not
Yeah, this is
Zoom,
great.
but it basically feels like Zoom.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I want
Thank
to
you.
also, before we go, just to say a
Mhm.
special thank you to Clay Calton, who helped us editing our talk today. Thank
Yay,
you,
Clay.
everyone.
Yes, there was a lot of editing work on this
Yeah, that's
video,
great.
and he really helped us out. So
That's wonderful.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you
very
so
much.
much.
Talk soon. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, that was great. So,
60.
no, go ahead. What were you saying?
Oh, no, I was just excited to see that all of their work come together and their different takes on different spaces. I mean, we've all been, I work fully remote now, and it is kind of weird meeting people in person. So I just wanted to kind of see what their take was on that. And if they do meet in person, I'd be really interested to see what changes about their dynamic or in the virtual space.
For sure. Coming up in a few minutes, we're going to have a panel from Future Arts. I see them arriving as we speak. Some of them, I think. So that'll be great. This is a good time to remind folks that there is a community spotlight tonight in Columbia City from 5 to 8 p.m. Check out cdesignfest.org for information, or head to the Seattle Design Festival booth at the Columbia City Farmers Market tonight at 5. I think, let's see. I think we're waiting on one person. Do we have everybody here from Future Arts? We're waiting on one more. I'll also highlight that there is a community spotlight tomorrow as well, downtown, all day essentially from 11 a.m. to 8:30 p.m.
Yeah, there's a few different talks going on. I was just going to say there's a few different talks going on at the foundation. I know there's one. There's also an exhibit going on starting between at 11 and going until 1. So there's a lot of things going on downtown tomorrow, which should be exciting.
For sure. Yeah. All right. Well, let's take it away with our Future Arts crew. All right. Well, excuse my technical difficulties here. Howdy, everybody. We've got one technical issue here. We're trying to get Yulia on the line here, and we're unable. Are you all able to chat amongst yourselves while we bring her in?
Sure. Yeah. What's up, everybody?
Hello. How we feeling?
So good. So good.
Basically taking notes and trying to download all of the past 3 months into a succinct presentation.
Yeah.
I have all kinds of prototypes over here to jog my memory. It's actually been kind of fun. Now, looking back.
After
That's
all the
always
hard
how it
work
is.
is done.
Yeah, once things are past, it's like, wow, that was incredible. And you just think of the rosy moments, you know what I mean?
There she is.
There she is.
Always with the grand entrance. I was here. We tested. It worked. Hello. Nice to see everyone. How's everyone doing?
Doing great.
Good.
Good.
Lovely to see everyone. Well, I know we don't have a ton of time, so let's jump right in. I think maybe let's start with intros. We've got a couple different folks here from different groups. I'll start. I'm Yulia. I'm the founder of Future Arts, and we're a brand new, although very long stemming group of women and non-binary led folks that are creating digital and physical artworks for the Seattle and global communities. We have a showcase going on right now in South Lake Union on 9th and Thomas. We've got 5 more days left. And part of the showcase is ARtPops, which is a mixed reality food and digital artwork. So nice to meet you all. I'll throw it over to Lara to continue the intros.
Hello, Lara here. She, they, one of the co-founders of Future Arts, along with Julia. And I would say that ARtPops is a fun little brainchild of Future Arts that we hope to keep ongoing and do seasonal releases based on season and locale, and then to be influenced by all the different makers and artisans we bring together on the project. It's a really fun excuse to bring several different types of people together and teams, which will be evident as we get around for everybody here. And I will pass it over to Rachel.
Oh, what's up? My name is Rachel, she, they. You can also call me Ray. I'm one of the founders of Lamp Lab, and we are a maker-based nonprofit getting up to random stuff like this. My teammate Charles is also on, and we were brought on to create the popsicle stick holders for ARtPops. So the physical part of that project. Charles, why don't you speak up?
Yeah, how's it going? I'm Charles. I work with Rachel over at Lamp Lab. We've got a really cool team of people kind of bringing together artists and manufacturers and just doing all kinds of really cool small scale maker projects like this. So excited to be here. It's been really fun and we'd love to chat about the project. I'll send it over to Matt at Houdini.
Hey, what's up? Matt Bug here, Houdini Interactive, and we're a digital agency out of Spokane, Washington. So within this project, ARtPops, we were the digital side of things. So bringing in the 3D and animation for the augmented reality piece of ARtPops. So excited to chat about it. Penn, go ahead.
I'm Penn. I'm the second of 3 founders over at Houdini Interactive, and I'm the COO here. It's exciting to be able to work on projects like this because we generally work with large Fortune 500s or other entrepreneurs, very, very corporate or business focused. So the opportunity to collaborate with talented artists is just, it's an honor. And Nina.
Everyone, I'm Nina, she, her, and I kind of work between Portland and Seattle, and I do a lot of fabric work, hand sewing, and sculptural work. So I made this piece that was translated into this awesome collaboration, and it's all hand sewn, or well, I usually do hand sewing. This one actually involved more like gluing, but it's all like quilted fabric and stuff like that. So yeah, quite an honor.
That's awesome. Thanks for the intros, everyone. So what's fascinating and what we love doing at Future Arts and with this particular project is, as you could see, bringing together multiple different crafts. We've got Laura and making the act, and we have mom and pops as well, not here. That is the physical popsicle you eat and creating the taste of it. We've got Lamp Lab creating with their hands and something that a brand new product design essentially piece that activates the digital layer. And then we've got the digital piece that was all grounded in Nina's beautiful mural. And that was the inspiration for this seasonal popsicle for Augment. So as we all are approaching this project from our craft, I was wanting to pose the question to you all of how did it feel from your point of view of the comfort of your craft coming to this project from that point of view, and what did it feel like coming from that point of view, and then what did it feel like interacting with other completely different crafts and intervening with those. So I guess we can go around and say a couple words about that and see how we do. I guess maybe we can go in the same order. I can pop it to Laura to talk about the creation process there.
Yeah, I think maybe since we did a little intros, I think I'll just sort of do a brief description of ARtPops in its entirety now that we have an inkling of what the pieces are. ARtPops is a real IRL physical tasty frozen dessert with a AR filter or digital rendition of the flavor layered over top. And so you get the mixed reality food and beverage that Future Arts is really excited to start leaning into, kind of creating new, as you were saying, Julia, creating new intersections of like where we can mash up different experiences and create immersive, multisensorial, interactive experiences. And so ARtPops is just one of those things. And this particular flavor was Italian blackberry and lemon balm, which was influenced very much by Nina's piece, and also speaks to the season and plants and herbs that are sourced locally, and then again made by all the local artisans and artists and makers. So just kind of like an overview of what that looks like. And at that point, I forgot your actual prompt, Julia, but I just kind of wanted to create that little visual for us. And maybe that's enough.
Yeah, I mean, essentially coming at this from the point of view of your craft, but I think I wonder if I could share screen and show a little video of this. I'll share screen, let's see. Play a little video. So all of our filters, can you all see this?
Yeah, it's a
great. So all of our filters are through Instagram and shareable, and part of it is populating your Instagram feeds with meaningful stories. So I also, once we get to Nina, I'd love for her to talk about the story itself. But the way it's done is we've got a line image and then the popsicle. You can see it here glitching out a little with the IRL and the URL right there. But, as we look at this, there's also sound. Eli's not here, but Eli did some awesome soundscapes for us as well. But yeah, we could continue maybe with Rachel and talking about, the holders. And I know you have some show and tell for us as well.
Yeah. So from the point of view of my craft, which is, physical product design, it was actually pretty fun in a lot of ways, because with design, you're factoring in how you want people to feel and how you want people to behave, and you're basically creating an experience and affecting people's emotions. And so we had a bunch of iterations of how we could do that. The main thing was I also do graphic design, which played a huge part in this, because I would say the graphic design is what is the the last step, the final step of the portal into the digital world, because that's what activates, the filter. But yeah, it was definitely very interesting. The main thing that Charles and I encountered was time being a constraint, and manpower, I think. But from the point of view of physical production, it's it's like a small thing. It seems like it would be pretty easy in a lot of ways. Hence the reason like we agreed to it immediately. Like, oh yeah, no problem. But I think we had like 50 different iterations, because getting it right, being part of that URL universe and getting that right, and kind of making a seamless experience was actually very challenging while meeting the budget standards, the time frame, and like time constraints while scaling it up to 750.
Yeah, I can kind of springboard off of that. Yeah, it was definitely a unique experience. Just to also play off the prompt of what it felt like to work with all these different crafts. I mean, it always feels multiplying, when your efforts are kind of combined with other people attacking things from a different point of view, and that was really cool for us. Yeah, on the physical product side, we ran into a couple of challenges, which Rachel has literally hundreds of examples of successes and failures on, but to try to do it this quickly, I mean, the original ARtPops were laser cut, and that laser cut we noticed took away some elements of, for example, the wood. It would burn the wood around the edges, so you wouldn't see the grain of this really cool multi-layered laminated wood that we were using. So we switched to using a CNC, which instead would give us like a really clean finish. And if you go and look at the pops, you'll see they actually have a nice clean finish on the side there. So it was really cool. Yeah, there's a pop that Rachel's got. It was really cool to kind of go through and just iterate on this process. Yeah, there you go. You can see those wood grain layers on the side there. Another issue that we worked through was the laser cutting added depth to the QR code, and we noticed that when you would turn the pop, the shadows would actually change the shape of the QR code, and that would throw the computer off. So you see there's the original ones that were burnt on the edges and they had depth to them. So our new version actually uses a heat transfer process to lay the design flat on it. And so once again, Rachel's showing that that flat design, and that doesn't have that same problem where when you bend it, kind of the shape is changing, and the AR system was able to handle that better. So yeah, it was a really cool process. And I'll maybe toss it back to Yulia or over to Houdini, whoever wants to jump in.
Yeah, I think we can.
I do want to add one thing, because you asked about the collaborative element as well. It was very interesting, Charles and I and our team like struggling over these and whatever, and then knowing like there was an artist involved and there was Houdini involved. Like, I don't know, it was an interesting like domino effect. At one point, I accidentally deleted part of the graphic in Illustrator, and I was like, oh shoot, am I gonna have to then like tell all these other people? Because it was minor for us. It was just one of the shaded parts. But then I thought, oh man, like this is way beyond just us here in this room. We can't, you know what I mean? Like we can't just kind of fudge it and it's fine. We have to let other people know, because they're designing things expecting this exact label, It was just interesting to know like there's other forces at play, I think.
And we were all kind of we only connected all in one room after we all got to a certain point of creation. So I think we're all working in our own little teams, and then we had that like mega ARtPops call where everyone met each other and was like, hey, here are all the pieces, and we put the popsicle together and streamed it online, because we're also working cross state. We've got Houdini on the east side of the state in Spokane. Nina was in and out of an arts residency with a reception here and there, and made an amazing effort to kind of join in on our calls. And we used Slack to communicate. We used email. So also using all these different tools to make sure we're all talking about all the different components. But yeah, to your point, if one thing is off, it's like the tracker won't work and then the art won't show up. So it is totally a domino effect in the design process of it itself. So it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, throwing it to Houdini to talk about kind of the digital and starting with Nina's concept yeah, let's do that. And then we can round it off with Nina.
Great. Yeah. On our side, I'd say we kind of jumped at this opportunity. We were super excited. One thing at Houdini we like to do, and kind of what started Houdini, was the ability to bring digital with a physical kind of experience. And this is a super unique experience with ARtPops, just because, you know, you have the flavors, you have all the senses really, of just having the flavor of the popsicle, and then the physical art that kind of feeds into the story of the popsicle. I've never had a popsicle with such a deep story, I guess. So, and then being able to layer and collaborate with an artist to kind of replicate and then add in some elements like the bee flying around, some kind of animated elements to kind of take it to that next level when you bring it to digital, was super fun. And it was really easy and fun to work with Nina. Really, it was like, we're going to do this. And she's like, that sounds awesome. Let's go. So I wanted to give a big shout out to our 3D animator, Carl, who did all the digital, and super talented guy. And he kind of he even took some of the textures that Nina sent over. She was able to take some swatches of the textures of her art to be integrated into the flowers and the plants that were created in the digital piece. And then jumping into even Spark AR, there's always limitations with digital that you have to account for. And I'd say it was kind of a learning process getting into it. The first kind of models that we created were super detailed. And then come to find out with Spark AR, it has to be, because it's going on everybody's mobile device, that has to be dumbed down quite a bit. I think it was around 4 megabytes it has to get down to, which, if you know 3D, it's kind of hard to get anything to 4 megabytes. That's pretty small. So Carl did a really great job with just kind of taking what he had and really bringing it down, but still kind of keeping some of that detail, and being able to keep, and that's everything from sound to animation, to the model. So being able to bring everything, all the pieces in, and still keeping it at that size for performance. It was just really cool to see everybody kind of collaborating and working together. And then when it comes to the holder, I remember us being on that call of you guys getting the first kind of prototype of that and actually seeing you do it for the first time. And that's just the joy that we all get to see. You know, if you haven't been to Augment Seattle, definitely check it out if you're in Seattle, to see it in person, because the video just really doesn't give you that kind of sense of feeling that you get when you taste it, you see it, and you can hear it, and you just get this full sensory kind of experience out of it. So definitely a lot of learning on our side, but we love that about digital. It's an ever evolving kind of craft, especially through augmented reality and through the web. So super exciting and we're super proud of kind of the final product that everybody kind of created with this project. So Penn, did you have anything to add?
I just see a comment from Anna about so many people involved, and yeah, this is a lot of teams coming together to bring this to life. And it wasn't like a typical school project where you might have a couple of people bust and hump to make sure that it comes to life, and then a few other people are just not contributing. Everybody was contributing 100% all the way through and pushing the limits and figuring out solutions. So the fact that it's so many people, and B, we're all remote until one big meeting, that's quite the accomplishment and such a interactive experience. It's a great job, everybody, and thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then last but not least, I'd love Nina to kind of talk about the artwork, and I'll share screen and show the mural originally that inspired it. And yeah, go for it. Okay, let's see. There you go.
Yeah. So I can talk about kind of like the background of the piece. So this piece is like a bunch of different species of non-native plants that grow in the Pacific Northwest. And I've just been doing research for like the last couple of years, learning about plant histories and collecting that, and then making this piece based off of that. They're kind of like stylized versions of those plants. But basically, I was just drawn to this concept because learning about these histories, these plants come from all sorts of people, from like colonists to refugees to immigrants. And I'm just really interested in how the land represents these stories and the movement of people over time in the form of basically just like weeds, you know, like things that grow in our backyard or along the roadside or whatever. So yeah, I guess I kind of see it as like a portrait of, you know, our communities and our histories. And it's a really deep piece, like with a lot of research that went into it. So I think the hardest part about this whole thing was kind of figuring out how to condense that into something like, you know, a popsicle. But I also think that it was a really cool opportunity to use these tools that I had never like been exposed to, like animation or like the sound, and to have that really add to the storytelling of the piece. And then of course the taste of the popsicle too. And it was just a very fruitful, very great collaboration between everybody, kind of like figuring out the different elements of how to like tell this story that, you know, that I'm very passionate about and have been just like deeply researching. And yeah, it's just a great collaboration. Definitely challenging in a lot of ways because for me, you know, mostly working in very tactile mediums, I think like making sure that these textures and the idea of comfort and vibrancy, all the things that are like really important to my work, making sure those were translated was a really big thing. But everybody was so supportive, and yeah, Carl was great to work with, and I just took lots of pictures of like the fabric I used, and we put that into the piece. And like having the like idea of the bee come in was just like a great storytelling element, and it all just really came together in such a great way. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Nina,
Just going through some of our footage. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just impressed when I got to chat with Nina a little bit. She snuck in when I was giving a little bit of a spiel at the ARtPops, and I was just beginning to speak on her piece a little bit, and then I saw her, and I was able to find out that the mural took 5 months, 5 hours a day, 5 days a week to put together. And so that's just really impressive with the depth again of the piece and the dedication, and really all the building blocks that kind of culminate in this seemingly simple product is kind of amazing when you think about the man. I don't even know if we've actually counted how many people truly were involved to make it all happen. But anyway, Nina, I just love that little detail about like adding to the depth of your piece is like how long it took you to create.
Thank you. Yeah, I should also say that like this piece was really just in my parents' basement for the last 2 years. So like this was an amazing opportunity to like give it a new life that like even though it might return to that same basement after this is over, you know, like it continues to live on. And I think that's the beauty of doing these like mixed reality type installations.
That's awesome. Whoa, that was a perfect little punch there. Well, I know we don't have a ton of time left, and I went through some footage to give you all kind of some visuals to get a sense of this really unique experience. Definitely come down. Just to kind of round it off, I wanted to throw the question out about, you know, as we continue into the future, as we talk about a lot of future arts, and technology becomes another limb. It's something, you know, we can't escape the fact that we live in both realities. Why is it important to have that perspective and have that intentionality in combining IRL and URL? And I'll just throw it to the team if someone wants to speak to that. Any thoughts about it?
Well, I think that technology is permeating every facet of our lives. And it's really easy, especially in the age of capitalism, for that technology just to be tied with productivity. And I really like this whole endeavor because it is showing how you can use technology in art and empathy and emotion and use it for a completely different function than I think we historically have.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that there's an opportunity for the rate at which art can progress, because we can iterate so quickly in the digital realm and bring it to life in relation to the physical realm, and continue to push the limits of how we are interpreting the visual elements and creating artistic representations. So like even in the last 5 years, the ability through the tools that we use to create art, 3D, even 2D, like it's come so far, and we're able to do so much more, so much higher detail, and the animations are incredible. Like it's crazy how much we're able to push that creative side and bring it to life.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to keep recontextualizing how we use technology. And as I like to say, we define it and not let it define us, so we can create the stories we want to see and not let it bog us down, and tell the stories I need to be told using that technology. So I know we're at time. Lamp Lab is putting out some incredible behind the scenes footage, so I would highly encourage you to follow them on Instagram. Loving the reels y'all have been putting out. So I haven't even seen all the incredible amount of jigs and 3D like support systems you've created and experimented with. It's super cool to see those now. And I know you have way more than we've seen on Insta. So follow them and check it out. And obviously we've got, Wednesday, last day to get an art pop would be Sunday. So the next couple days will be really busy for us. Come out Thursday to Sunday. Check out futurearts.co for hours and such, but we're there all the time. Taste the deliciousness, say hello. Any last words? I'll give it to Lara.
Thanks. Yeah, I just love, again, all the parts that come together, and in the end, it just inspires smiles every time somebody activates their art pop, and that for me has been very fun. It's a novel, seemingly simple experience, but people walk away with that memory and that experience, and a physical takeaway as well, so they can keep sharing and playing with the filter. And I've been really also delighted having the little people come through. All the kids are just having so much fun with it, and it's very cool to see so many different generations of folks playing with the experience in different ways. And so, yeah, come try one out.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. I think we're at time. Yeah, it's just been a blast. And I know, Nina, you're going to be here this weekend, so we're excited to hang with you. That'll be great.
And thank you to SDF for hosting this for us. Nice to have a platform to share the behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Some handles in the chat for everyone to follow us all on in the Instas. See if I can figure out how to do that. Well, it's Houdini.studio. We've got Lamp 3_lab, and then we're Future Arts Co. And then Nina Vichayapai, or we're featuring everyone on our channel. So that's another place to go and grab everyone at once. Yeah.
All right, y'all.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you, everybody, from Future Arts. Sorry to click in the thing right as you're saying goodbye, but hopefully everybody got to say goodbye. How you doing, George? We've lost a few
I'm doing a
people.
very interesting project. I'm just thinking how combining the newest technology, everything available for us, and searching for using it before it's getting grabbed by the bad ideas. It is amazing, and I saw some of the projects live in Seattle, and just amazing effort just to put it together, the research, the forward thinking, the curiosity. It's just dripping curiosity. I just blown away with the unique use of technology.
Yeah, and they shared a few handles at the end there. I want to re-highlight here just so they don't get missed. But I'm going to pop them up on the screen here. We got Lamp Lab.
And then what is another very interesting factor, how fluidly they can combine all kind of those disciplines and type of works and fields of the interest and everything. That's totally blown me away. That it is something opens up the combination of all of those skills and knowledges, and it's just so rich, so powerful for the future. Right now it's absolutely interesting, but I think it will be amazingly powerful.
Yeah. Well, and so that I think this is a good lead into our next presentation. Mindy Lehrman Cameron is going to be presenting. Mindy's an architect, an educator, and she's a lot of things, as well as a member of the SDF Council. We'll be talking about the case for Downtown Seattle Cultural Center. So it's that same idea of creating a hub for arts and culture. We're going to let her take it away once I click on the button here to turn her on.
Hello, can you hear me? I hope so.
Yeah.
How you doing? Okay, I'm going to share my screen. So let's see if I can do this properly. I'm not sharing my screen yet. Here we go. All right. So can you see me?
Oh yeah, we're ready for the show.
Okay, good. All right. First of all, I can't see myself, so we'll see how this goes. But thank you to the Seattle Design Festival for allowing me to give this talk. I am very grateful. I'm Mindy Lehrman Cameron. I'm an architect. I'm a fellow of the AIA, and I have been living and working in Seattle for the last 27 years, run my business for 35 years. I go by she, her, and I'm going to jump right in. I also prepared this in writing. I don't trust myself to be able to extemporaneously hit all the high points, so I will be reading a little bit and trying not to read too much. My proposal is a case for a downtown Seattle cultural center. Seattle needs a vibrant place downtown that will function as a singular center of culture and design. As the downtown core struggles to recover from the blow of the pandemic and within political turmoil, a center promoting culture and the arts, located intentionally, can be a powerful catalyst to revitalize the downtown core and bring people together. Design affects us 24/7, 365 days a year. And I know that I'm preaching to the choir about that. But what is astonishing to me is how few people recognize design as central to their lives. I see this as a loss of agency and a detriment to discourse and advancement. This design illiteracy has particular resonance in decisions that are everywhere. A designer or designers planned and created your city, the roads and means of transportation, the buildings where you and your family live and work, the clothes and shoes you wear, the tools which you communicate. Design decisions allow or inhibit possibly your every move, either intentionally or not, by ignorance and neglect, or with empathy and intelligence. It is sensible, or dare I say wise, to understand and appreciate design. And design is an outgrowth of culture. In this time and place in the Pacific Northwest, there are heterogeneous cultures at play. In Seattle, just at a glance, there are people of regional heritage cultures and origins, including African American, Native American, Asian American, Latinx, Nordic, Eastern European, Middle Eastern, and more. There's a pride in literacy here and a historical intention of celebrating the diverse histories and various peoples who live and have lived here. But these days, the downtown is particularly boarded up, struggling to recover from pandemic and protest. While in this environment, the assorted cultural organizations are scattered throughout the city, often competing for the same resources. Seattle is also struggling to attract tourism. I contend that a great central to downtown cultural center will bring these disparate, though related entities together and give them more strength and unity with shared resources and discourse. Culture and design in and for Seattle can be brought to the forefront of a public discussion by creating a central, multifunctional place celebrating culture and design, open, accommodating, and accessible to locals and tourists. I claim that none of us can afford to disregard design or the arts, that by paying attention to them in our lives are made much better, and that we need to understand our histories from many perspectives to be able to go healthfully into the future. Further, I claim that we need to support culture and design to give this sustenance, to grow and improve in the sciences, in technology, in the world of communications, transportation, business, you name it. We need to cultivate our individual and collective means of expression. The more we hone our skills and protect and share our stories, the happier and healthier our communities can be. Excuse me. I should tell you I am sitting here with a broken foot. All sorts of things going on. But okay, when I travel, I seek museums, theater, and culture reflected in local architecture, theater, and food. In Chicago, where my daughter lives, I've been drawn to and have made several pilgrimages to the Chicago Cultural Center in the old library adjacent to Millennium Park, across from the Geary designed concert venue and near the Art Institute. I'm so tremendously impressed and inspired every time, and I suggest that we create a cultural center here in Seattle, downtown, based upon this Chicago Cultural Center model. The Chicago Cultural Center was the nation's first and most comprehensive free municipal cultural center. It receives hundreds of thousands of visitors each year, approximately 800,000 in a recent year, and is one of the most visited attractions in Chicago. The center teaches people about community and culture through free music, dance, theater, films, lectures, art exhibitions, and family events. It supports private events and organizations if the mission aligns with theirs. It celebrates arts, history, and the heritage of diverse cultures. And every year it has about 1,000 programs and exhibits celebrating and sharing the visual and literary arts. As I am enamored of and inspired by the Chicago Cultural Center, I've been doing research on it. I've been collecting information and have had the great pleasure and privilege to meet some of the people who manage that facility. I've begun to map my idea onto the physical aspects of a historical Seattle location, specifically the Macy's Bon Marché, the building at 300 Pine Street that you see on the right. So on the left is the Chicago Cultural Center, and on the right is our Seattle's Macy's Bon Marché building at 300 Pine. I've also been digging deeper into the Seattle cultural history, learning more about this place where I've lived and worked for the past almost 3 decades. I see a world of connection between the idea of a cultural center in the Bon Marché location in Seattle and the hugely successful Chicago Cultural Center in the old library. And I should say at this time, open to the prospect of having a Seattle Cultural Center reside in another central downtown location, such as Pacific Place. But at this time, and for the purpose of depth and detail that can only come with place specificity, as all of us architects know, my focus is on the Art Deco Bon Marché. So here's the vision. Thinking about the Chicago Cultural Center, now imagine a cultural center for Seattle. Visualize this center in a historic Art Deco structure located at a hub of transportation for cars, pedestrians, buses, trains, en route between the downtown retail core and Pike Place, easily accessible from the east, south, west, and north. In fact, pretend that it happens to have a large garage adjacent and attached to it. Now, from here on, I'm going to use photos of the Chicago Cultural Center that I took, because I want to show you, give you envision an idea of what I'm talking about. Envision a tourist resource center in this building, which acts as a starting place from which architectural and other tours may emerge. Picture multiple exhibits about the arts, artists, industrial design, city planning, architecture, local arts for sure and primarily, but also national and international, at many scales and constantly changing. Envision a lecture hall where the film, I'm going to flip through these and then get up to speed on the slides. They used every single inch of this building, hallways for history exhibits and photography. This is a courtyard that had a temporary Pyrenesque-like sculpture. They had murals on the outside. They have shows about immigration and other topical interest shows. It has intersectionality between city planning, architecture, industrial design, art, all sorts of interconnections. It's always provocative. It's often inspirational, and it often shows, the Cultural Center often shows shows of things that you may or may not ever have seen, but then show up in other major museums. I'm so excited by that. It's often and almost always visually compelling. And it is always responsive. It's always pertinent. This is what I said about national and international shows. This happens to be Theo Jansen, the Walking Sculptures. And they also have a learning lab with residencies and other opportunities for people of all ages. And then again, they added to the historical building in an architecturally sensitive way, and the additions and ramps and ADA requirements were all met. So envision a lecture hall where the film festival, the Seattle Design Festival, or the Architectural Biennial might give talks and presentations which support their larger, wider events, locations, and aligned missions. For instance, the Seattle Design Festival might do something in this hub. Conjure a pop-up shop of items for sale by local artists that generously give back to the artists. Think of a vast and impressive room or rooms that accommodate concerts, dances, performances. Add to this a resource center and a sanctuary for the unhoused, where people can get warm or cool as needed, have lockers and showers, and receive advice and support. Suppose that there's a senior center with its own makerspace and its own gallery. Imagine a rooftop gallery, or I'm sorry, a rooftop garden with views to the west over the Sound. All sorts of flexible, equitable office spaces and others. Now, imagine that there is a place where this can really happen. There is a place. For months now, I've been floating the idea for a Seattle Cultural Center to be located at that Art Deco Bon Marché building. And although I realize that this building was recently purchased for a great amount of money, $580 million, and that the owners and partners have plans in action for retail and offices, thus presenting my concept with many hurdles and promising a long uphill battle, all pivoting on funds, as everything does, I have been receiving enthusiastic responses from colleagues and associates. Many of them people I've met in my professional capacity as an architect on interpretive projects in and around this region for the past 27 years. And these have been commissioners, ex-mayors, planners, architects, designers, realtors, educators, artists, cultural and spatial visionaries and leaders, and others. A cultural center located downtown, en route between downtown and the public market, would be a highly visible and accessible hub in which various cultural organizations can have proximity and share resources. It doesn't mean that these organizations give up their current locations, but that they collaborate in this large single center where they can rub elbows and exchange ideas, and where visitors to Seattle can gravitate with ease to resources that enable them to acclimate to and celebrate Seattle as a cultural mecca. A Seattle Cultural Center, attractive and accessible even to non-designers, will induce a more proactive, inclusive, and participatory discourse to generate a wide positive effect on the physical environment in and around Seattle. It will bring tourist dollars. It will bravely revitalize downtown. Again, I do realize that this project will meet obstacles and this effort will take a long time. I would be neglectful not to mention that there are open air drug markets and there's been murders in that area recently on the streets around the building. But this project, of course, needs significant funding, as I said, and I've talked to several money managers, one of whom suggested that perhaps there could be high-end residences above, built over the historic structure, that would help subsidize the cultural center below. Whatever version this takes, given current trajectories and the office and retail contracts that the owner is now starting and seeking in this location, evolving this building into a cultural center will take probably about 10 or 15 years to accomplish. This is just the beginning. I envision a beautiful, functional, symbiotic outcome that will eventually emerge. I'd like to elicit your support, and I want to make connections. So now I want to give you some data and comparisons between Chicago and Seattle. First, Chicago. I'm talking to a screen and not seeing any faces. It's very odd. The Chicago Cultural Center was designed by Shepley, Rutan, and Coolidge architects from Boston. It was completed in 1897 as Chicago's first central public library. It was, quote, designed to impress and to prove that Chicago has grown into a sophisticated metropolis. It is neoclassical in style with Italian Renaissance elements in the spirit of H.H. Richardson and made of Bedford blue limestone with a granite base and 3-foot thick walls. It was Chicago's first public library, and it's been called the People's Palace. It's still trying to live up to that mission. It's 104 feet tall, has a 4-story north wing and a 5-story south wing. You enter it from north or south, although it has large windows facing west to the park, the Millennium Park. And it has beautiful staircases, is lined with mosaics, and has 2 glass domes. One, a Tiffany dome, 38 feet in diameter, the largest Tiffany dome in the world. The building was a library until 1979, when it was turned into the cultural center and became the official reception venue where the mayor meets presidents and royalty. And it was partially renovated in 2021. And here is Seattle. The Bon Marché building in Seattle was originally designed by architect John Graham Sr. It was built in 1929, and it is Art Deco in style. The structure is steel and masonry. It has 8 stories, originally 4 until the mid-50s when 4 more stories were added. It has 864,000 square feet of space with 80,000 square foot floor plates, which are the largest in the city. This building's so large that it has its own zip code, 98181. There are 15-foot ceilings, and it has more than 20 skylights. The building is still connected to a large garage with a sidewalk. There's a Chicago connection to the building, too. The Bon Marché store was launched in 1890 in the area now called Belltown by Edward and Josephine Nordoff, who had moved to Seattle from Chicago. Their small retail business grew and grew until they opened the Bon Marché at 3rd and Pine in 1929. The building cost $5 million to construct. In 1929, just before opening, it was sold to Hahn Stores of Chicago. In 2003, it was Bon Macy's. In 2004, the name was changed to Macy's. The building was bought in 2021 by a Seattle-based real estate company, Urban Renaissance Group, and New York investment firm KKR. The current owner's intention is to have a ground level retail with offices above, a 20,000 square foot rooftop deck, and potentially a food hall. As I understand it, the leases now include Uniqlo, a spa, and the offices for Amazon, which were there before the sale. The existing Victrola Cafe is intended to remain. Another reason to have a centralized cultural center in this city is to support and promote tourism in Seattle, which is a big revenue maker. In 2018, there were 21.3 million overnight Seattle King County visitors with $7.8 billion in visitor expenditures. According to Arts and Economic Prosperity 4, nonprofit arts and culture are a $447.6 million industry in Seattle. That's a nonprofit arts and cultural organization. That nonprofit arts and cultural organizations spend $272 million here, and there's an additional $175.6 million in event-related spending by their audiences. All this creates 10,807 full-time equivalent jobs, generates $248.2 million in household income to local residents, and delivers $38.2 million in local and state government revenue. I see this as an effort to create a Seattle Cultural Center in this location. And I think that it is, I'm sorry, I'm going to start that over. That's what you get for reading. I see this effort to create a Seattle Cultural Center in this location as ideal, though not without hurdles and potentially not even without finally being made to think the exact location. Retail leases are generally from 10 to 15 years, and I've not yet had reception to the owners or developers, although I am seeking it, and I hope I can talk to them soon. But I have just closed my architectural business of 35 years, and I have the time, energy, experience, and many connections and supporters. Time-consuming and challenging as this may be, I see the benefits to Seattle, to culture, to arts, to us as astounding. I intend to persist. Want to join me? Thank you, Trevor. See if I can get back to you.
Hey, everybody.
Thank you. Funny.
We'll switch it over. Can you see us now, Mindy?
I do see you now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome.
It's really
Thank
funny.
you.
You're talking to you're talking into your own screen. It's very quiet here. I made sure there were no dogs next door.
Right.
No lawnmowers taking off and so on.
It's a little different than being in a room with folks, for sure.
Yeah, it's a little different, as the first presentation today said.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It looks like there's a question coming in from
I will.
YouTube.
Yeah, I think it's a comment, but I'll share it anyway.
Oh, great. Okay.
Thank you, Amelia.
I had a question. Yeah, there's comments coming in now. I had a question. So say someone's watched this and they really want to help out. They want to move this idea forward. What is one thing they could do to help?
A couple of things. If anyone has connections with any of the cultural organizations in the town, and this is all over the place. I mean, there's so many, as I mentioned, all the different entities and, cultures that are in this town, they each have their own positions. If anyone has worked with them or is somehow involved with them, I'd love to hear from you. Furthermore, and even maybe more importantly, anyone from the city. And also anyone who works with the owner group, that's Urban Renaissance and also KKR. I haven't yet been able to talk to them. Also, I've been able to talk to people at middle management in Amazon, and they have a stake in this building, which I think is really important to them, and they intend to keep it, although it keeps shifting. And one of the things that I've heard, and I think the reason they're changing it, is the floor plate's so deep that people come to Amazon to work, but then they move out toward the windows, and the windows are single pane, so they can hear even someone coughing from down on the street 6 floors below or 8 floors below. So I think it would be great to talk with, as I said, someone from the city. I want to collectively get more input and help other people with their cultural organizations. I've been able to talk to some, but not all, obviously. I know people on the boards, but I'd also like to know people who are in the leadership positions in a lot of these places. So, but also I had rubbed elbows with Pat Callahan, who is a CEO of Urban Renaissance Group, but I didn't get a chance to really talk to him. So I would love to talk to them. They may or may not be able to be receptive about this, in which case location might be something that has to shift, but I do think it has to be along that corridor. And I do see boarded up need. The Seattle downtown is coming back, but slowly. There's only 44% occupancy in the office buildings. And I think we need the tourist interest. I think we need to make people feel safe. I think that kind of a hub of activity would be exciting. I also have spoken, I'm sorry, I'm going on, but these are things I didn't present. Greg Lundgren and two other people are now in charge of the Bumbershoot effort, and Greg and others have gotten I think they've gotten the okay to use the Bed Bath & Beyond building, which has been vacated, and they're going to make an arts center there. My understanding, although I haven't talked to Greg at length about this at all, is that they're turning it into a visual arts center, which has some overlap with what I'm proposing, and it's 1 block away. But what's exciting about that is if we take people down from, all of the hotels downtown and all of the places between Pike Market and Seattle Center and start to generate a culture of sort of lily pad of things to do between downtown and Seattle Center, which is still vibrant and still making festivals and doing exciting things, then we could actually make this core of culture and the arts that would elevate Seattle into a more international cultural arts mecca. I think we're on the edge, but not really there.
I want to note Future Arts chimed in the chat to say they currently are exhibiting Glitch Goddess, which is part of the Augment Seattle I guess we'll call it festival on or at the Macy's building.
Oh, cool.
They even noted they've worked with Urban Renaissance Group. They'd be happy to connect. So,
well, if you could
we'll put you and Yulia together after the.
Thank you.
After this show.
Mindy, are there any other models other than the Chicago model that you've been looking at? Whether that's in the States or elsewhere?
Well, I go to cultural centers, but they're usually just for one entity or another.
Sure.
Even I think Vivian Phillips and others are starting a cultural center down in what's being called Africatown. here. There's, certainly there's other centers of culture all along. There's Native American centers and so forth. And I think that those have viability, and I've been to those or even worked adjacent to or among the people who are involved with those. But I have, and maybe someone can offer a suggestion. I don't know of cultural centers elsewhere that have this kind of density and sort of this large of a mission.
Mm-hmm.
So
that makes sense.
if you know one, I'd love to know.
I'll let you know.
I'm kind of rounding the wagons to try to find out everything that I can, and try to hit all the points. I'd say that the most realistic that anybody has been is the man who moved the Nordstrom into the Frederick Nelson building downtown. Said it all pivots on the funding. So one of the exciting things from people I know who have done real estate development is the prospect of building, and then as an architect, the excitement of building over this building and bringing it up, and maybe doing something. It's high-rise, high-end development, and I'm not sure if we have a glut of that now. So there's so many parts and pieces, but maybe we could build above it and do something to help support a cultural center. But I'm still trying to find out. There's so many parts.
With that funding aspect too, are you looking more at individual contributors or grants, or how would that? Do you have concept around that?
Well, I talked just yesterday morning, and I haven't really absorbed it all, of how the cultural center in Chicago, the kind people, these amazing people in Chicago, got up at 7:30 here, 8:30 there before they officially started work, and they gave me their time and attention and dumped a lot of information that I haven't yet absorbed about how the cultural center is run. I don't want to say something wrong here, but a lot of it, it's under the auspices of the city to a large extent, and then there's a lot of the people who lease the spaces, and the events that happen all help subsidize it. So I'm trying to first get an idea, and I'll probably map that out next to figure out how the operating, because the operating and maintenance, not to mention anything like changing the windows and making them double pane, is an extreme, big investment. And I'm just beginning to do that.
Awesome.
I don't think I'm asking anybody for any money right now.
Fair.
I just want to say.
Go ahead, George.
Yeah, I just want to say I applaud and admire your effort and then your vision. Just so, because the finances is always an issue as a big center, I think just it would be interesting to think about if things not work out in that way. Think it maybe like a scattered way of approach, which would allow this whole plan to come existence, and then because of the benefits would be shown, would be available to everybody to see, then might help to bring those together and have a great new place. If this thing would not work out, because what your vision is that's what Seattle needs. Some way people has to do something together, do things together, not necessarily consuming, but enrich their life. I'm with you all the way, and whatever difficulty, there is always a solution, and we'll find it.
George, and to that light, and thank you, by the way. There's a retail core that was built with the city. I think the city supported it probably in a major way, in a funding way, and I don't know all of the history, but it's called Pacific Place, and it's right downtown. And it really is the core. When people go downtown, that's kind of like the pivot place from which everything else extends. Yes. And it is now underused because of the pandemic and because of the protests a little bit. But, just it's kind of sad right now. And I think that if I were to pivot to another location, this is just down the block from this location, it doesn't have the strength of the Art Deco historical which, by the way, I want to make a shout out to Amelia Rury. She turned me on to it. She was my student at Cornish, and she did a project with this building, and I thought, ding, ding, ding. It was like light bulb. So thank you, Amelia, if you're still here. But the other thing is that I've talked to people such as someone I know who used to be I guess, president of Northwest Folklife, and I've worked with him, and he's now on the board with the ACT Theater, American Contemporary Theater.
Yes, yes.
And they have a building which is in an awkward location from my point of view, but he thinks that they would be, someone on the board was talking to him about welcoming this as a sort of test location. And, things like that could work. You could do a smaller version of it and then grow it somewhere else. But the problem that I have is in the back of my mind, there's a book, I forget, it's one of those classic design books from the 70s or 60s. And it was about how if you put something out into the universe and as an industrial designer, like the Google Glass, and it fails, then nobody wants to hear from you again. Even if you bring it back to the research lab and you change it and you improve it and you make it exactly the way that it should be, they still think that it's a failure. So I wouldn't want this prospect and this cultural center to fail just because it was not ambitious enough. I'm open. I'm really open. I think this is going to take time and a lot of people and funds, as we say, and really everybody rallying around. So I'm open to flexibly reconsidering everything, but I don't want to, do it too small.
Yes, yes.
All right. That's a good way to end it. Mindy, thank you for joining us. I put your slide back up so anybody who'd like to reach out can find you there. Thank you again.
I want to thank you, all of you.
Thank you, Mindy.
So much. Yeah.
That's great.
This is exciting. And not too many technical glitches that I caught. So
it's always good.
It's all one thing. All right. Thanks, Mindy.
Thanks, magic.
We'll
Thank you so much, Mindy.
Bye, George. Bye, Cal. Bye, everyone.
All right, that was good.
Great.
We're on to our next guest on the show. We're going to bring on Jayme Thornton. Amy is a doctoral fellow at UW School for Built Environments. I believe I'm sure she will correct me if I got that wrong. And is actually going to share a film that she created today with us. I'm going to go ahead and bring her on air right now. Amy, I hope you're ready. I see you there. Hi.
Oops.
Hi, Amy.
I'm black.
Oh, your screen's black? We can see you.
You can see me. Okay. Well, if you can see me, that's fine.
There's always a little hiccups here with this system. But well, thanks for stopping by. We were going to ask you what it is you're going to be sharing with us today and maybe set it up for our audience.
Sure. So I'm really interested in rural social infrastructure. I'm interested in structures and infrastructures that bring people together across difference and divide. And I'm particularly interested in how we connect through the nonverbal, through the embodied experience. And I call it multisensory experience or multisensory and experiential infrastructure. And the outdoor wood burning oven was particularly interesting to me because it's something that we can set up in small villages. It has a history of being set up in many European countries in small villages where everyone would come and make their bread. And while they're baking their bread, they would also connect. And now it's being used in various places effectively and non-effectively, always actually to some good effect at bringing people together. I think particularly in the climate we are in this country right now, the political climate and the cultural climate, we really, really need to have more infrastructure that brings people who would not normally connect together. So I made this video because I was really interested in how the wood burning oven can do that. And I wanted to express as much as possible, although it's got interviews with all these bakers, these fabulous bakers. I want to express the experience of it as much as possible through the video. So it's very abstract expressionist. It's less literal. It's not like a documentary so much. It's supposed to leave you with the feeling of it. My other work is about connecting across from the human to the beyond human and human to systems. But I've become more and more interested in just how do we connect the human to the human when we have such a divide in this country. So there's your setup. And,
yeah, it's on theme very much for today.
Oh, good. Yeah, well, it's all about connection. And I'm certainly very interested in doing this in rural areas in this country, which I think are kind of neglected by academy and often by design.
Excellent. All right. Well, I think we're going to show it now.
Thanks.
Okay. Great.
The sensory experience of manipulating material is something that we're horribly deprived of.
We don't really too much these days have a direct relationship with the primal elements. The one specifically I'm thinking of now is fire.
People would come to pizza night and they'd try to get that fire pit going, and I'd be like, don't touch it, just don't touch it. I was like, it's not your fire. And every time they touched it, the fire would go down. And I just, but I understood what it needed.
I feel like I'm entering into a relationship with something that's as alive as I am, and it has a language like I do. It's a different language.
And being able to control the fire. Not really control it, but understand it. Which was the draw to me.
That I feel the rightness of life when I'm engaged in something as primal as a direct relationship with fire, right? It makes all the other things that are incomprehensible about modern life, for me incomprehensible, it makes them go away for a while.
It's like, it's not easy, but who wants easy? I'm not asking for easy. I'm asking for something more complex, and now it's built into me, like the relationship of how hot it is.
Something about the first smoke that comes off a fire that is just, it's pretty instinctual.
There's a moment when you're heating it when it goes from smoke drifting out to suddenly this cloud of black smoke pouring out of it.
There's something that's irresistible about when you see that oven fired up. It doesn't matter if you're 8 years old or 80 years old. It's really magic.
That was sort of the first sign that we were getting to the temperature we needed. And then the next is you take flour and you toss it in, and you count how long it takes for it to turn brown or burn. Sparks when you throw it in. It's too hot. You have to let the oven die down. If it takes 10 seconds to turn brown, then it's not hot enough, and you might have to toss more wood in. When there are coals going in there and dusk is settling, it's a really beautiful sight, because there's a glow coming out of the oven, there's food coming out, and then people are all standing around. There's a kind of happy hum to conversation. I think people are drawn by fire.
Very deep down on a genetic level is that the combined smell of smoke and food is just really primal, and people gather around that and are attracted to that beyond their conscious thought, just like it is an magnetic thing.
They were coming here. They were gathering.
Because this is a communal place, it's nobody's and everybody's.
It really does attract every kind of person.
They've brought it into their story. It's part of this island because of what it has given.
Teenage cohort though is so exciting for me that like lots of teens come just because it's like a pretty fun social scene.
And people started to share poetry, music, alcohol, I don't know, and, stories upon stories.
There was a sense of everybody taking part in this gathering, and I think that sense is the sort of most important thing. In a way, the oven is an excuse to get together. It's a great excuse, but it's the togetherness and the contributing to the togetherness that I suspect is what actually brings happiness to people.
These are 15 years worth of stories and connections and people feeling like it's their home.
And it's just pretty amazing to listen to people who are strangers to each other, the kind of breaking down of the traditional groupings that form around identity are largely forgotten in this space.
As the pizza moves, people move to accommodate it, or move toward it or away from it, depending on what stage you're in.
The core of this oven moves freely with the heat expansion.
Just have to get out of your head and let the fine motor knowledge that your hands possess and your skeleton possesses.
It's a beautiful dance too, because you can burn them like that.
Black Brook was the place where there are many springs coming into the water, because this was a gathering spot for our ancestors. I can communicate because they're listening from here. That brings me some guidance as to what to do on any day.
There's something very different about just being in the outdoors and experiencing your humanity.
I need to stand out here and see how beautiful everything is every day, and not accept the negatives of the world and feel safe and give that to people.
These events are not short, it can go on for hours, and so the light changes, the air changes, the winds change.
Design is here, it's in the land, and this is what is the most valuable, precious commodity that we have. And this is what sings and tells the stories, and this is what brings the community in, and how do we support each other. We can't do it if we close our doors and windows.
We don't have to have these like totally hard lines about what is indoor and what is outdoor.
I think the stuff in the air that's in there, it's little bits of wood and ash and other things that get into the dough as it's baking. I think you get a taste of something more elemental.
For me, it goes deeper than the material world to have that kind of a experience of cooking in the wood-burning oven.
It's not the raw material so much as the alchemy that the oven itself creates, which is transforming flour and water and yeast and salt.
There's no preordained result. You put something in the oven, it's an act of faith.
Moved forward on these weird, whimsical, funky ideas of someone that is actually trying to listen to my ancestors.
I don't know, maybe knowing is something that's a little too cerebral, and maybe when I really feel like I'm in sync with the fire, then it's not a cerebral connection.
If you asked me to define it, I couldn't do that, but
I'll call it spiritual, right? At the risk of people going, oh, groan. I don't know what it is. That's the point. If it's not cerebral, how am I supposed to tell you what it is?
Right, we can't use words.
It's not just the food or the oven or the technique that goes into making the oven do what you want to, or the gathering of people, or the or the weather. I mean, it's everything. It's all of that coming together, and so each time you do it, it's a little bit different because everything that goes into it is a little bit different.
I don't want to make it sound like I know things. At best, what I can do is befriend the fire.
Okay. Great.
We're back. Sorry for the little hiccup there. It was great. Thank you, Amy. George, what did you think?
That was beautiful images and the descriptions, the flow of the views. I would like to ask you, when the breads are done or anything you bake, how the group celebrate, how it looks like, how it's going to spend the time there.
I think it's different for each wood-fired oven. So the one you saw in the final reveal, she bakes food to sell, but they do have pizza nights, which have now included all sorts of different types of foods, in which they bring community together. This is on Martha's Vineyard, which is very wealthy, but people she's a Wampanoag Indigenous American, Julie Vanderhoop, who runs that one, and so they have. She has a lot of her relatives as well as people from all over the vineyard come and celebrate. They do buy the food. And then other places, the Noah Elbers of Orchard Hill Breadworks down in Alstead, New Hampshire, they have a big pizza night. Also, again, where they roast other things too, but mostly the pizzas and the toppings. And they open it to the whole community. They do make money, but all that money goes to charity. And it went from just, I think, maybe under 100 people to 600 people every Sunday and became this huge thing, but this wonderful celebration ended under this big covered area. And people, again, all different. He was really passionate about how he was bringing people from all different types, backgrounds and who would come together and just hang out with each other and get to know each other.
That's powerful. Yeah.
For sure. Mindy was watching. Mindy said a nice little comment from Mindy. Yeah, it was great. I liked all the texture. I mean, Cal mentioned that as well. The experience of the textures and things through the video is
I wish it would be a smell-o-vision, so we could sense the aroma and the
video's not quite there yet, but if it were in a museum, if there was some public display, I would we could have the breads baking simultaneously. I don't know, the wood-fired oven, that would be enough.
Play this video in a park and having a small oven set up and that would be an interesting experience.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. Amy, I know people will be able to see it through the stream, but are there other spots where they can? You submitted actually a few short films, and we're just showing one of them. Is there somewhere else where people could go to see those?
Yeah, sure. I have a YouTube channel.
Okay.
It's if you just YouTube Amy Brooks Thornton. I didn't make a slide for you. You can
That's
find.
all right.
Yeah,
I can.
and I do
I'll probably
advertise.
type it in here.
Amy Brooks Thornton with an S and 2 N's in the Thornton, and this is a YouTube channel, and you'll see that my video along with a bunch of not that many other ones, but a few other ones, because my work is also in design. So I also actually make structures that hopefully bring people together. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, for
I'd
sure.
imagine something like that. Possible to find.
Yeah, and there's also my Instagram, of course. We all have our Instagrams, and that's I post a lot of my my journal work. As I'm making stuff and thinking about things, I just use that as my journal, and that's on Code to Joe Project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and you're another one who's joining us from far away. I believe you're on the east side of the United States here.
Yeah, I'm actually from streaming from a farm in northern Vermont where I do most of my work, and actually it informs a lot of my work, being this connected to the land and to food and to the beyond human and rural life.
Well, that's it. I mean, again, it's our connection to everybody else. Seattle connecting to Vermont, to Hungary, to places beyond here. Spokane, I think we're the last one, so that's pretty great. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Kick off next
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem.
Bye.
George. All right. So we got one last part for today's virtual main stage. We're going to take a look at what the Seattle Design Festival Design and Community has been doing. They actually interviewed some folks from the Seattle Walk Report. So we're moving from gathering around the oven to walking or mobility here. So let's take a look.
Walk sign is on. Crossing 12th Avenue. 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 Walk sign.
My name's Susanna Ryan, and I'm the creator of an Instagram comic series called Seattle Walk Report, where I've been documenting my long walks through Seattle since 2017. And I'm also the author of 2 books, Seattle Walk Report, an illustrated walking tour through 23 Seattle neighborhoods, which came out in 2019, and Secret Seattle, an illustrated guide to the city's offbeat and overlooked history, which came out in August of last year, so August 2021. One day in 2017, something just compelled me out the front door. And I think it was kind of that realization of you don't need to have anywhere to go. And quite honestly, I don't think that I had ever just gone outside for no reason before. I think I'd always been so focused on, okay, if I'm going outside, it's for this reason, and this is exactly how I'm going to get there. It's altered my relationship to Seattle in just about every way. It felt like when I started to walk, I was seeing this side of Seattle that I had both never seen myself and never really heard anybody talk about. And I like to look at these little things that are just sort of parts of the environment and think about how all these different people relate to this thing, this little mundane thing, in ways that we'll never know, but everybody kind of has this connection to these little parts of places. It feels like both nothing is permanent and also a lot of things are in this certain kind of way, or like spirits permeate these spaces in this certain kind of way. And it's like when I'm walking, I just feel that connection. It allows me to just quiet down my mind and just observe and be present. The drawing part of it is something I've always liked to draw. Ever since I was able to hold a pencil, it was just something that I really loved to do. And I almost, in some ways, consider myself a designer first, because it seems like before I draw, especially with how I draw, I need to have kind of a clear design or a clear idea of what the design is going to be or how things are going to be. So at first it's a design problem, and then it's a matter of, okay, now I actually need to bring this vision to life. One of the things that really opened my eyes to walking and made me fall in love with it was realizing that you didn't need to have a plan ahead of time, and that you could just leave the same spot every single day and have a completely different adventure each time. One of my favorite little pieces of feedback I ever got was in my first book, I have this page where I've drawn different roundabouts that I saw in Rainier Beach, and they're just roundabouts on somebody's street that happen to have like some nice plants on them or something. And somebody came up to me at one of the book signings with printouts of one of the roundabouts and said, "This was my roundabout that I adopted. It's on my street. I planted this plant," and was like pointing to plants that I had drawn in my book. And I was like, "I planted that plant," and it was so, and she was like, "I never thought I'd see this in a book ever," and when I flipped to this page, I like, my face fell out of my body, or whatever. And she like gave me these printouts of it, and it was just really sweet. When I realized that a good walk, quote unquote, could start right outside my front door and take me anywhere that I felt like going, that really opened my eyes for me and made me fall in love with walking.
All right. Well, we got to the end of it, George.
Yeah, we
2.5
saw
hours.
a lot of amazing projects. I mean, just really wide-ranging and new concept, old concept combined. Yeah, I'm very excited about how the event flowed, and I really hope that we could continue, and then we will give space for IDs, to show and widen the range, the distance. So today is very easy. All of the project we saw, it actually shows and fuels the exploding interest in design. I see. I had discussions, and that's to me as involved with design on every field, and see what it means. Not I love making objects, but it's so amazing to see the effect of the design, and then so this interest, which totally exploded about design, make design more like, I want to do it, I can do this, instead of usually it was very guarded, kind of far away. And what I think what it brings by default is people will understand the process of good design. That design is a highly personal, creative process, and the decision-making process, where you're making your own research, analysis, and make a decision based on adding your own values. Those things, because the popularity of design will be widely spread, and I'm pretty sure, I really hope it will be like a universal life skill, Because then all of these factors, which make designs good, because of the decisions we make, the serious decisions, will be applied to our life. Like all designers know that all of the work what you do is not just when you work for someone, but that's how you conduct yourself. That's how you see the world, and that's where I see this power, and especially with the historically when communication level peaked or bumped up, then our creative output dramatically increased and improved our societies, civilizations. And now with the cyber and hybrid program, which we saw amazing examples, how you can combine. So it's not like, okay, now it's not throw away what was and now we have but the combination of the just unbelievable opportunities, because it's increased not just the amount of information, but the places and the distance where those informations could come together. And that was a major factor throughout human history, where the distance between the communicating factors and groups was farther away. That has more power to change how we will live and how we will form our societies. So I see a great advancement coming on. Every project we saw shows. So what do you think?
And all exemplified connection. Mindy agrees. So she should be teaching design. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Somebody just shared the other day a letter from Kurt Vonnegut, who he wrote it to a class, and his whole thing, at the end of his life, he was a few years before his death, was saying, look, kids, you got to start doing art today and do it every day and do something creative, continually. And I keep hearing that from older creative folks that would meet. That's their number one thing, is just start doing stuff now, because that is really where they found sort of the soul of their existence.
Yes. I mean, when you give early experiences to children, it's so imprinted them, it's so affect their life. I want to say one interesting story. When I was a little kid, I had a lot of good inputs, but when my mom left home, told us we have three kids, so we had to handle a lot of stuff. But anyway, he said, just read and draw. Just occupy yourself. And we did, and it stick with me, and that early experience really just give a direction later on. So I think focusing on kids, families, young adults, very, very important, but not exclusively. But that's when we look at young people who, let's say 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 10, 15 years from now, they are making decisions which affect everybody's life. So I think it's our duty, designers and educators, and to give those kids the tools so they will be making good decisions. Not for our benefit, but that would benefit the whole society, but for their life.
Yeah. I think you summed it up great. I do want to hit the last two notes. So the festival, this is the end of the virtual main stage for this year's festival, but there's still more Seattle Design Festival to come. Tonight there is a community spotlight in Columbia City from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Head to the Columbia City Farmers Market and look for our booth to find out more. I don't know if we still have totes and shirts left, but if maybe we do, so I'm going to just say, and then you'll have to show up. You could end up with something like that, either on a tote or on a shirt. Columbia City, we will be doing a community spotlight tomorrow from 11 to 8. Stop by the Center for Architecture and Design or Fulcrum Coffee as our two hub spots to get a map and see all the things that are downtown. You could also go to cdesignfest.org. That's our website, which has all of the info coming up. And of course, we have one last thing. That's a closing party on Friday night. And there are tickets available, I think, still, possibly. It does tend to sell out, so check it out and visit our website for more info on that. That is it. I think we're winding down. I did want to give a special thanks to Adrian and Allison, who did a whole bunch of work as their own little committee, making all of the animations and title sequences and things like that you've seen throughout the virtual main stage. Going really above and beyond. Adrian has been sending us updated title sequences each morning as the lineup has changed. So thank you to both of them. So anyway, with that said, is there anything you want to close it up on, George?
I hope I see everybody tomorrow again. That's my dream. I think we will find ways to expand this and keep it going.
For sure.
I really hope.
Well, good to see you, George. And thank you, everybody else.
Keep designing and thinking about design.
There you go. That's a good way to end it. Bye, everybody.
Bye.